Simpin Ain't Easy podcast, where we will dive into the heart of personal recovery, politics, relationships, and business with unfiltered conversations and a fresh perspective. I'm Vince, your host. We are passionate about unpacking the ideas that shape our lives and drive our world forward. In each episode, we'll explore what matters most, challenge assumptions, and spark meaningful dialogue. Buckle up, this is where curiosity meets clarity. Let's get started. And I think we're good to go. We're recording. So how are you doing? Welcome to the Simpin Ain't Easy podcast.
Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited.
Absolutely. I was really excited when we met. I couldn't believe we actually ran into each other at the very end of the recovery market. And so I was like, oh, wow, there's another author here. I've got to capitalize on this moment.
I thought that was really neat that you came up to me to do that. And I was honored, actually. And I don't know if you know, but Laurel Love, our mutual friend who started the whole and invited us both to this recovery market to sell our items, actually took a picture of the both of us signing each other's books. I thought it was really neat.
Did she share it with you? Because I
She
did
did.
get a copy of that. I thought that was so
Yeah.
awesome.
So
So for the audience, let's who are you and what do you do?
I love that you asked. My name is Adrianna K. Granlund, and I am the author of Beautifully Broken and Wonderfully Put Back Together, my recently published memoir. But besides that, I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, how did you just stumble into? I kind of know the answer, but I want our audience to know it. Yeah, how did you stumble into becoming a drug and alcohol counselor?
I stumbled through the doors of recovery, I guess.
Yeah,
So I am a recovering addict, and I currently have and celebrate 8.5 years clean and sober from addiction. Um, and so my addiction started at a very young age, like 13. And it started with a glass of champagne, really. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, this feels so good. And I just want more. I just remember wanting more. And, and I ended up becoming, an alcoholic, a drug addict, for 23 solid years. And I found my way into recovery through, and which is in my memoir, which you'll find, just, you know, 4 stints in treatment, and just got sick and tired of being sick and tired of myself, and was finally able to get my life back on track. And when I finally figured out that we could actually do this thing, Vince, like act like for real and not fake it, I couldn't wait to give it away. And so I ended up becoming a drug and alcohol counselor myself so I could help people just like you and me.
I kind of found my path. For me, it took about 30 years to get here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I did the same thing. I wrote Simpin Ain't Easy, but once I actually got it all down on paper, I challenged myself to get it published. This was my fourth step. And so in that process, I was just like, I can't shut up about this.
Yeah.
I gotta remove this stigma. Now
Sure.
my story in the book, when I started out, was that need for wanting to be wanted, to be a part of something. And right into your book, as a matter of fact, like the first, I can totally relate. And this was when you were actually, it was around Christmas Eve, and I guess you were hanging out with a girlfriend or something from high school. And you were talking about when you took the pipe and held it to your lips and inhaled. Now, I didn't start my drug journey until I was an adult. However, alcohol and cigarettes, and to try to be a part of something in junior high was when
Yep.
I got started. And so when
Mhm.
you start, even though our journeys were different, like the experiences and the feelings were the same. And
Absolutely.
and so your book was really good read because I was really like wrapped into it because you were taking a page from my story. And as I was reading through it when this is one of the, and this is uh I mentioned it to you the other day when we spoke briefly, but when it's almost like it was divinely inspired. Um
Yes.
and when you were writing about like your drug addiction and your experiences and how things started to unravel for you,
Mhm.
it was really choppy and it was just really like herky jerky. And that's how addiction is when it comes to life, because you never know if you're going to be high or if you're going to be low or if you're going to be left or you're going to be right. And it's like, it's just kind of all over the place. And then as the journey started to go through the book, I was like, she's starting to get it together. You can see her forming paragraphs. And it was just like, so I don't know if anybody's ever made that connection, but I found that. So, can you walk me through your book writing journey, like as you were writing this
Absolutely.
down?
Absolutely. Just and thank you for that. Writing, if any, I love that you're familiar with writing a book. Simpin Ain't Easy was absolutely wonderful and very well written. I wrote mine, and I can tell that you wrote yours in a version that was true to you. I 100% wrote my version in a way that was true to me. And, as I started writing, initially, this whole process started as me journaling, essentially. Right. And so I would just write and I would write my truth and I would write things that I've been through and where it all started for me. And just like my addiction, it would jump around, right? And my memories would jump around as well. And so as I was writing, I just remember trying to put my thoughts in order, right? In the same way that I was always trying to get my life in order. And that's how it felt writing my story. And as things, as you said, as my life started to come together, things began to make sense. Because when I was in my addiction, not a whole lot made sense.
Yeah.
Things just didn't make sense. I didn't know whether I was coming or going half the time, if I was going to stay in it. Every time felt almost too comparable to the time before. It all seemed to run together for me oftentimes. I'm sure you can relate to that. You're like, man,
Oh
what
yeah.
was the time that I did the thing? And then, oh yeah, was it before or after I did the thing? And that's how my addiction felt, like it was a big blur, right? My recovery
Yeah.
becomes very clear. And I'm very clear about when something happened and when something else transformed in my life. So yeah.
It's like when you get out of that alcoholic fog or the drug addicted fog. It's like it's almost like Bill W. and AA talks about this. Putting on a new pair of glasses.
Mhm.
It's just the clarity and the things that
Sure.
just magically, almost intuitively come to light after having recovery under your belt. It's just an absolute miracle. Um, so as when you hit your bottom, right?
Mm. Mhm.
When there was I hope I find the right chapter. I got everything bookmarked, but of course it's like there
Mm.
was a
Okay.
and I can't remember the exact chapter.
Mhm.
But you were talking about a guy who would come by and picked you up in the middle of the street and brought you to a safe place.
Uh,
Where and how did you have the courage or the insanity of
mm,
being able to trust this individual?
true. That's so good. Absolutely. In my story, I do talk about that. That I will never forget that man for the rest of my life. Um, I get it, it sounds insane to get into a stranger's car in the middle of the night. And part of me was completely heavily under the influence of methamphetamines, right? Probably a little bit of alcohol in there as well. But really I was under the influence of the night, that night particularly, that I talk about in my book, I was locked out of my hotel room essentially. I didn't have enough money to pay for the night of the hotel room. And my friends, who we all stayed in this hotel room together, had left the casino. And when I came, and they weren't coming back until God knows when, right?
Yeah.
And so essentially, I felt stranded. I was stranded. And I was walking out in the cold, just pacing because it was so freezing cold. And I remember
Sacramento
going
gets
in,
cold.
oh God, it was like biting cold, you know what I mean? And I walk in, and I was going into like the gas station trying to get warm for a second. And then I'd walk back into the hotel and say, hey, have my friends come by yet? And I knew they weren't back, but I just wanted to go take a minute to get warm. Can I use the restroom? Whatever I could do to get a few minutes. Well, it wasn't until that last stretch in the restroom at the gas station, the lady was like, listen, you can't stay in here. Right. Because she didn't know what I was doing in there, if I was using or not. And
Right.
I get it. So she put me out. And as I'm walking down the street on the sidewalk, this man pulls up And he, he's like, and I'm literally holding on to my arms, right? And it is so cold that night. I felt like it could have snowed. And he essentially pulls over and he says, "Hey, do you need a ride?" And I'm like, thinking, and for a split second, I thought to myself, what if this man like killed me? Like, who knows, right? This
Right.
isn't safe. And I looked at him and I just checked him out for a second, but something in my spirit told me this, he feels like he's okay. He might be okay, right? So I was like, "You're not going to hurt me, are you? You're not like some sort of weirdo, right?" And I was like, "And this has nothing to do with, like, I'm not going to
As
do
we're high
anything.
as
I'm not a
fuck,
Right.
right?
Right. I'm not a prostitute, sir. Right. I'm totally loaded. Please don't hurt me." But I was like, "And I'm not a prostitute." So, right. And he was like, "No, he was like, "Do you need a ride somewhere?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So I get in the car and it was right up the street. And I guess it was a little bit of both. It was insanity, but that gift of desperation, just to get warm.
the way
Got in the
that
car.
particular the way that particular chapter read was it was almost as though God had sent the guardian angel for you. It
Yes.
was just, I mean, and because in addiction and in recovery, people have all kinds of stories about something outside of themselves intervening. And I remember the last few nights where I was feeling completely nihilistic, and I just was trying to find a purpose and trying to figure out what it is that was going on. I was on the brink of deleting myself, and I was like, I've there's got to be something else, because 30 years earlier I had gone through this whole same thing. I compared myself to a racehorse tripping outside of the starting gate. I could just never get my shit together enough, right,
Right.
to where I felt good about me being a human being.
Mm.
And that particular evening, I just said, I've got to go to an AA meeting.
Yeah.
And it was like, it wasn't like because like I said, I was in a really low place. Now eventually I found my direction more so towards Al-Anon, and we can get into the middle part because we were getting to the beginning and then we get into the end, so we're gonna fill it all in, right?
Yeah. Kind of
uh
like a Brooke. It's a little
uh,
jumpy. That's all right.
right, just like us, right? We got to go all over the place.
Absolutely.
um
Make it make sense.
so for me it was just like that thought just came, you got to get to an AA meeting, you got to pull your shit
Yeah.
together enough to get to an AA meeting and get outside of yourself. And
Yeah.
so these are those little sparks, those little things that happen, these little guardian angels that just show up out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and divine inspiration, for lack of a better word. I mean, because I truly
Absolutely.
believe it's like we're here for a greater purpose, we just have to figure
Yeah.
it out.
I totally
um
agree with that 100%. And that man did feel to me like he was an angel. I kid you not. I can't explain the energy because I don't know if I would have gotten in the car with anybody else, to be honest. I wasn't I'm not that kind of person, even in my addiction. And when I got in the car with him, he had told me that he had missed his exit, that normally he would never, take that. He's taken that
wow.
exit a million times, right? And yet that night particularly, he missed his exit and saw me walking, and literally turned around in the middle of the street. And he said that he normally would never do something like that either. That felt very much like divine intervention. And that man saved me from the cold that night. And he was I mean, the fact that he didn't want anything else from me, nothing, he just wanted to help me, was like, it showed to me, not only is human kindness still exist in the world, that even if some people don't believe angels exist, I 100% do. Maybe you'll believe in angels exist in people, right? There's still good humans in the world. So, yeah, that was an incredible night. I'll never forget.
So as we're going through the book and going through your journey,
Yeah.
um, what were some of those spiritual awakenings I mean, obviously that was a big smack in the head,
Yeah.
but through your journey and as I was going through your book, it was just like different light bulbs at different levels. So I'd like you to describe some of that, and a lot of it had to do with your children.
Oh, yeah. Big time. Big time. So spiritual awakenings can happen to any of us at any given moment, right? Oftentimes we will get these little, what I call, people call coincidences. I like to call them godcidences, right? And these little moments in our life where something or someone will show up for you, or something great will happen that you're like, did I even deserve that? Like, how did that happen for me? Like getting a, for instance, getting a flat tire and you're out of gas, and you're sitting there at the gas station out of gas. You have no, you're checking your pockets, you have nothing left, and somebody shows up and is like, hey, are you good? And you're like, no, I'm not, I'm actually out of gas. And that person fills up your gas like completely without questions asked. Like, that's a God shot right there. And I got tons of those throughout my addiction, throughout my whole life. And so I've been very fortunate, and I've kept my eyes open for this. And it's, for me, spirituality and my relationship with God, which is essentially the most important thing to me, because it started for me when I was a kid, right? It started for me as a little girl. And I grew up in the church and all the things. And for me, as I got older, I started to develop not just a religion, but a relationship with my higher power of my understanding, and the way that he would reveal himself to me, essentially. And how he reveals himself to me is going to be different for how he reveals himself to you. And sometimes there's a lot of similarities and sometimes there's differences, but
Right.
just like a parent, you know, for me as a parent, I have three children. And although I have three beautiful children and I love them all, I have different relationships with each of my children. And each of my children have a different perception of me and get different viewpoints of me, the same way that each of us have a different relationship with our higher power, right? And so no relationship is the same. But my spiritual awakening happened for me, like the big one, right? My rock bottom. I was just, man, my kids got ripped away from me, man, in CPS
Yeah.
custody. And you know, I've had CPS before in my life and I'd earned my children back, but I was a chronic relapser. So I would, I was getting loaded. I would, have the house, have the car, have the job, have my kids. And as soon as I'd get it together, I'd relapse. Like and then I'd lose all that. And then I'd get it all back. And then I'd relapse again. So just chronic relapsing. And that last time for me, um, there was a really horrible incident that happened to me, and after several stints in rehab, and I had relapsed again for what would have been my last time. However, throughout that time, I met various people, so I don't know where this person came about, but there was a stalker. I ended up with some sort of stalker, or some guy that was like on my tail, and the weirdest things were happening, right? And when you're in addiction to methamphetamine, you can't tell if you're coming or going half the time, right? And so when I would come home, essentially, and I would see like my sliding glass door open just like this much, I would, did I close that all the way? Did I, if I, leave again, take my son to the park, and I know I didn't leave a cup out on the counter, but there's that cup out on the counter. That was so interesting. And the more I started to notice these things, right, until this person was getting more brazen, right? And essentially what had happened was, I ended up overdosing on a drug I would never take, right? Which was mixed in with some milk in my house. And I ended up like virtually like almost passing out right then and there. And I made a phone call to the police, and and the fire department, the EMTs, they were all there. And I was completely acting out of character, like just beyond not myself. I like couldn't even control my body movements, essentially. And so my other two children, my oldest was off to college, my daughter wanted absolutely nothing to do with me, and my youngest was then, charted off to CPS for the last time. And when I woke up in the hospital room the next day, or 2 days later, really is what it was, I just remember thinking to myself that although I didn't deserve what happened to me, I couldn't believe, like, there was a part of me that knew that if I hadn't been an addict, that I wouldn't be there, right? And I just
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
so sick and tired of whatever. Like, life was happening to me all the time. Like, I was a victim all the time. Um, and I just felt like in that moment, not only like the biggest victim, but just I was sick and tired of it. And then I realized just like the fact that I was alive and blessed to be alive, that I could have been taken away from my children from whatever this person had done. And I was lucky to be alive. And I was sick of it, you know? So that wake up call for me, as I'm told that I have to go to rehab to get my kids back, right? Like, if you want, CPS says, if you want your kids back, you're going to have to put in some work. And I'm irritated with CPS. I'm like, why? Like, I've done rehab before. Like, I know how to do this. I can do it on my own. I'll go to meetings. Like, I don't have to do this. And
That's the
they're like,
ego right there.
oh man, right? It's like yelling at me, you know? And I'm like, well, fine. And I go in there all begrudgingly and I'm all pissed off. I'm in rehab. And I just remember going in the shower finally and just looking in the mirror, just disgusted with myself. And that was the moment that my knees hit the floor. And I realized that, if for me this thing was going to happen, it was going to have to take God Himself to take it from me, because I could not do this on my own. I had tried 100 different ways on 100 different days, and I could not seem to stop myself. It would always find its way back to me. I would always find my way back to it. And there we were doing this dance all over again, like flies to shit, essentially. Right.
Yeah,
And so for me, that was the moment that I prayed to God. And here's the piece about this prayer, because I've prayed 1,000 times, millions of times before this, right? Grew up
right.
in the church, all the things. It
Even
was
when
a
I got
different
into
moment.
shit, it's like, God, get me out of this shit, and I swear I'll
Please,
behave.
I'll never do it again, right? Oh, 100%. That's what we always
Constantly negotiating. So yes,
man.
we're great prayers.
Oh, for sure. Right? Absolutely. But there was something different about this prayer. I meant every single fiber of that prayer with every fiber of my being. It's like my soul prayed that prayer, right? And I was like, God, if you can take this thing from me, this thing that tells me that I need to change the way that I feel, whether it's, I'm happy, angry, lonely, sad, tired because it's fucking Taco Tuesday, that I need to take a substance to change the way that I feel. If you can take that desire from me, I will serve you for the rest of my life. And I mean it. Just show me how, because I can't do it. So if they would have told me to stand up and bark and jump on one foot, I would have done it. I was so
Yeah.
sick of it, you know? But that was the moment. And then immediately after that prayer, I cannot explain it except to say that it was my higher power did for me what I could not do for myself. And I immersed myself into the program. I immersed myself into treatment, and I had no desire to ever go back. And I haven't had one since. So if that's not a spiritual awakening, I don't know what is.
That's truly impressive, because mine was a little bit different, and it was a 30-year journey.
Mm,
Um, s- um, so when I first walked into Alcoholics Anonymous 30 plus years ago, it was a bitter battle between me and God.
mm,
And I completely turned my back on him, and I was effing this and F you that and F and I'm out of here. I had 8 years of, just like you, I had parochial school in my background, and everybody was constantly telling me on how I should, pray to God, and how I should be a good Christian, and how I should do this. And, everybody was telling me how they, worship the old man upstairs. And it wasn't until I was working with the sponsor, and he's like, well, describe to me what God is to you, or higher power, or whatever. And
yeah.
so I sat down and I listed, I'm all, F this, and this guy thinks he can do that, and this guy just constantly
Mm,
blah, 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 just listing off all of this stuff. It's just nasty, horrible poison,
yeah.
right? And he says, sounds like you're describing your dad. Why don't you consider thinking the opposite? And I was just,
Wow.
talk about a smack in the head.
Yeah, like, wow. That's wild. Oh my God.
Right. And
That's
so, now don't get me wrong. I've been in and out of recovery, meaning that I've relapsed, and walked astray and all of that, but
wild.
30 years later, coming full circle and back into Al Anon, for me, it was like, I had to develop a 30-year relationship with God. And eventually it led me back to Jesus. Right.
Hmm.
Because, and that's just the way I found at least in scriptures. And that was a weird way of how I got back to scripture. That
That's
was
neat.
because I had completely rejected the Bible until I ran into
Mhm,
a YouTube channel by Michaela Peterson, and
mhm.
this had nothing to do with spirituality or anything like this. This had everything to do with the carnivore diet.
In what?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
so
It's
wild.
a weird connect. Talk about God working in mysterious ways, right?
Yeah.
So I'm watching Michaela Peterson, and of course, in my YouTube thread, her dad pops up, Jordan Peterson, right? Jordan B.
Mhm,
Peterson. He's that psychiatrist from Canada who, talks about masculinity and and being something positive in a man's life and preaches masculinity. I could get into his whole bio. People can look him up. I'm not going to get in on all that. However, he had a biblical series on Exodus and Genesis and Exodus, right? Genesis,
mhm,
Exodus. And so as he was going through, and in the very beginning of his Genesis conversation, he says, "I'm going to try," and I'm paraphrasing, but he says, "I'm going to try to explain the scriptures," but he was pulling the miracle and the magic and the mysticism of it out, right? And he was
mhm.
just talking about Genesis as it relates to, for lack of a better word, like evolutionary psychology, right? And
Right.
he was trying to
Right.
draw those links. And so as he was going through the Genesis, and I was like, listen, and I was like, wow, that really makes sense. I
Mhm.
was just like beside myself. And then again, so coming full circle, like going through those series, and then it was like, oh
Yeah.
wait, hold on, there's a Bible app. What? Let me go check this out. And then
Yeah.
now, so when people start quoting scripture to me, it's like, okay, I can look that up. I can do
Yeah,
my own research.
absolutely. I know where to go look for that.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so
That's
that's
neat.
how I ended up. But again, for some people, it hits them hard and fast,
Yeah,
and some people it's a slow boil, right? Because
absolutely.
I consider myself a little extra stubborn, um and believe me, God has a way of checking me into the glass. For all you hockey fans out there, it's like he has a way of checking me into the glass, that it's just like, dude, you're still fucking up, man. I gotta make
Yeah.
sure I keep you in check.
Yeah,
And
and that's the
so
thing, he knows how to talk to you. Your relationship with God and your higher power of your understanding, right? Which is where you were
right,
talking about in the step work, where your sponsor, which my sponsor also had me do, which I absolutely loved, because we get to write out the version of our higher power to us, right? And
correct,
that's who our higher power is to us. And I remember also being in treatment comparing my list with a good friend of mine, and she 100%, like hers was similar, but they had some differences in there, right? And I was like, oh, interesting. So I love to hear that. That's how, you essentially figured out who your God was to you in the beginning, and how your sponsor described that was really interesting, right? That was fascinating to me. But essentially, what you now know to be your higher power and how he checks you, right?
right.
Is that's your relationship with your higher power, which
And
is
that's
incredible.
that's the beautiful thing about recovery, because I mean, I didn't have to develop somebody else's idea or try to integrate somebody else's idea of God or religion or anything like this.
Totally.
I had developed my own relationships. And the beautiful part about recovery, I mean, if they took out, you know Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, they took out and just basically put in the word dysfunctional anonymous, it's like, I think a world would be a better place. Again, that's my opinion, but
I totally, right? Some recovery actually does that, I guess, in their own sense, because it's everything. They like whatever addiction, right? You just go there. But yeah, lots of different places to go, to find healing, and whatever door opens for you, you walk through that. But I like the idea of calling it dysfunctional.
dysfunctional anonymous, man. It's just like, it's all encompassing. We cover it all. Everybody gets an opportunity to, find their own higher power of their own understanding,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Let's start recovering the world. Oh, look at that! It just slipped my mind. Damn it! That's old age kicking in. That's
Don't worry, I'm
that's the brain
perimenopause.
cell. That's the brain cell. The alcohol burned up. uh,
Damn
uh,
receptor.
Damn it. I just hate it when that happens. All right, so let's
Yeah.
see. Let's get back
Yep.
into the book because there was a couple of okay. So there was, and this is just, so this is my note that I wrote down. I still struggle. This is me personally. I still struggle with the negative or the idea of forgiving myself.
Mm,
Because I have done a lot of stupid shit. But this is the it's on page 53, and just gonna read it.
okay.
And it starts off with a quote. Do you think they'll ever forgive me? And this is where I believe you're
Oh,
talking about your
yeah.
children, right?
Mhm.
I asked my therapist one day, barely able to speak through the lump in my throat. Believe me, girl, I know that lump.
Oh,
For
yeah.
different reasons, but I can empathize.
Mhm.
Forgiveness takes time, Adriana, she replied gently, but it starts with you. You must forgive yourself. Talk to
Mhm.
me about that journey.
Man. Oh my gosh.
Hey, we're getting deep here.
Oh, because, man, that was I'll never forget these moments. This is the thing, as we're talking about, I literally picture these moments in my mind of just sitting there, and like my body was like slumped, and I just felt so sad to think about the fact that here I was, finally I'm awake. Essentially, I feel like I was awake. That's what recovery has felt like to me. Like I've woken up out of a dream state. And I spent 23 years in this dream state slash nightmare, right? And not always bad, right? Like some dreams, not always bad, but just in this dream state. And I feel like I was awake. And then I remember sitting there while on my healing journey in this space with my therapist, and I had like a really fun, like a good moment where I was kind of proud of myself. And then it like hit me like a ton of bricks, and I like sat back and like was slumped. And I was like, man, I have a lot of like I have a lot of work to do. Like I have a lot of years to make up for. Right. And I just looked at her and I was like, do you think they'll ever forgive me? Like what? Because it hit me, it occurred to me in that moment. What if they don't? What if my kids can't forgive me? What if all the damage and all of the years of drug use, all of the years of emotional neglect, and then, those feelings of abandonment, all the things that I'm working through with my therapist, what if they're too angry to forgive me? Right. And so when she tells me that I need to forgive myself, right? So in that, what she's telling me is that there's hope, right? Like there's hope. And when she said that, and I developed such an amazing rapport with this woman that I learned to like trust her, right? Which is not something that came easily to me. Is Trust is not something I gave. It's something that you absolutely had to earn from me. I didn't trust anybody. I
Right.
couldn't even trust myself. And so when
Yeah.
she said that to me, it like it just woke something up inside of me that said, maybe there's hope there. And so and she gave me this statement. Another thing, I actually didn't add this in, but she gave me this statement. I think she slipped it under my door one day, and it was like right around after we had had this session, and it was a statement that Oprah had made of all the people, right? Oprah said it best, of course. And Oprah said, forgiveness means to accept that the past could not have been any different.
Wow,
And
that's
you know what I'm
I,
saying? When I
I'm gonna
heard
have to
that,
stew on that one for a minute.
woo,
Right?
forgiveness means to accept that the past could not have been any different. And once I like read that, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, huh, that means that no matter what, I can't bend time. I can't go back. I can't like rewind. I can't go back into like I can't undo anything that's already been done. Not worrying about it, not crying about it can fix or change anything that's been done, which means the only thing I can do is fix and change it now, right? And so, in order to forgive myself, essentially, I had to take ownership and accountability for all the years that I had been in my addiction and the things that I had done. And I had to work my through my steps, of course, as you're aware, in your book, but that you talk about that we have to accept accountability because the only way to fix and change something is to acknowledge it ever even existed. So if I'm
Right.
sitting here denying that I've hurt my children, then how can I accept that and fix it and change it? right? If I'm denying that I've ever had an addiction, how could I ever move past that? So I had to accept accountability, and I also had to accept that I wasn't loving myself all of these years. Even, oh, I love myself. Oh, sure. Anybody who loves themselves doesn't throw like a whole 8 ball down their nostril,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and anybody, around, and doesn't, accept, multiple guys at a time, like that's that's not loving yourself, right? And so I had to accept that I was not loving myself, and ask for forgiveness.
Okay, so I gotta unpack because you said a lot of stuff in there, and we were talking about the original paragraph was about forgiving yourself, and it reminded me. You were saying about you got to, or your counselor was saying that you have to forgive yourself first, and it
Yeah.
reminded me of a lot of the readings that we have in recovery that says that you cannot give something that you don't possess yourself,
So
right?
true. So
um you
true.
know so it's like, in order to receive forgiveness, I need to be able to give forgiveness, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like it's a back and forth type of thing. And you also said trust myself.
Mm,
um and the thing and that again, it's like I can't give something um that I don't have myself. And
mm,
for me in the book, the way that was like, or the way I described it was the self betrayal. I was
yeah.
constantly in self betrayal, and that's kind of now let me kind of step this back to what we were talking about in regards to that night when I got that little glimpse of going back to AA. So I ended
Hmm.
up getting a sponsor in AA, and God bless him. I'm just a hard case. Uh, but he had told me that he would not be able to sponsor me unless I had uh, refrained from alcohol or stopped drinking for at least 30 days, right? Because he
Right.
wanted to see how dedicated I was. And so I agreed. But in my heart of hearts and my deepest of deepest, like I don't think I can be honest and tell this guy that I'm never ever gonna drink again, right?
Yeah.
And so I, day by day, waking up every morning, and I'm working with the sponsor and I'm calling and I'm checking in. But every morning I'm waking up and I'm waking up more and more and more pissed. And we're going to get back to the trust myself thing, right?
Yeah.
But I was just getting more. And by day 30, when we had our next meeting together, I fired him. And a lot of
Mm,
people who are addicted and don't understand this. And sometimes I still have trouble describing it and being able to articulate it. But when that morning before I fired him, I woke up and it just kind of hit me with a ton of bricks. It's like,
mhm.
stop bending the knee and stop being something you're not. It was like,
Wow. Oh, so good.
and
Stop
so
that act of self-betrayal over and over, right?
right. And what that meant to me is every time that I bent the knee or acquiesced, like when I went out and looked for help, right? And
Hmm.
my life coach tells me this, and I think you even mentioned it too. Like your life, it seemed like it was always based on transactions. It was like
Yeah,
when
all the
I
time.
needed help, I needed something. It's like somebody required something of me to change myself. And I could even equate this to, my marriage and all the other relationships. It was always a fucking transaction. And I always
Yep.
had to, I always had to change myself and I could never be my genuine self, and I was
Yeah.
constantly living in a state of self-betrayal.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so when you said trust myself, there's no fucking way I could have trusted myself because I was a goddamn chameleon. I could
Hmm.
be anything and everything that somebody else wanted me to be, except I couldn't be me to me.
Right. That part.
and s- and so when it came all together about the drinking, and then when it started, and again, this was 3 years of Al-Anon, and as I was
Hmm.
going through my recovery journey and writing my book and writing in my 4 step and coming to realize that I am not the addiction. The addiction was a symptom of my disease, and my
Yes.
disease is my inability to be me.
Correct. Oh my God. That is so good.
Right.
That is so good. So
It only
true.
took 30 years and publishing a book to get there, but finally, right?
But you did it. That's it. 30-year journey, my guy. And a book. And it's published. And finally the lights are on. You know what, you want to know what is so great about that? There's people who spend lifetimes, friend,
White
who
knuckling it.
never
Yeah, they white
or
knuckle
who
the
never
shit out of it, right? Or
yeah,
even
and
get
never
there.
figure it out. And never
Right.
even figure it out. And that's the heartbreaking piece, which is why I'm sure just like you, I know for me, just like you, I am so committed to speaking my truth as often as I can and just telling my truth. And hopefully it connects with somebody who understands that there's hope for them too, and they have to figure it out their way. But there is a way.
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. It's like, there's so many cliches, like, doing the hard path or taking the narrow path. And, sometimes it's not the high road or the low road. Sometimes it's just that very narrow path, right? That you
Yeah.
have to crawl through yourself, right? To get to where you need to get to for that understanding. And that's the thing. It's like, it's not my way that's the right way. It's not my sponsor's way that's the right way. It's not the Catholic Church's right way. It's like,
Correct.
how did I get to from point A to point B,
Yeah.
developing my own relationship, not only with God, but
Mhm.
with me, right?
Exactly, with myself, right?
Exactly.
Essentially
Right.
the God in me, right? And I believe
Ex-
that we have all sorts of beliefs, right? Like there's
right.
so, and which I heavily encourage. I believe that everybody's entitled to their belief, right? And that and I don't have the right to impose or impede my belief on anybody else, but they're mine, and I stay true to my beliefs, right? And I have no problem talking about them either, but I don't impose mine on anybody else either,
Correct.
right? So,
Right. Yeah, exactly. But we're all
yeah,
spiritual beings and we can connect through that
exactly.
spiritual connection. I mean,
100%.
even whether you
100%.
follow the Bible or whether you file, Native American followings or whatever,
Yeah.
we're all spiritual beings. There is, and
Yes.
Jordan Peterson, this is what was really crazy, is because when he was talking about religions and how the Old Testament came together and all the stories and how we transferred that spiritual knowledge, when
Mhm.
they were talking about all these false gods and all of this other stuff in Genesis, they actually talk about the Nephilim, right?
Yes.
The lower
Mhm.
gods, right? That the Greeks, it's like the connections are a little too uncanny, right? It's just like, wait a
Yeah,
minute. You're telling me that the Bible talks about this stuff, except I never took the time to read it, and
exactly.
it's crazy, just
All the
crazy
things.
stuff,
If you read
right?
the Bible, there's so many different things in there with where people are like, "Oh, I don't believe in crystals and that we have God's power in us." So if you sit down and read the Bible, all of this stuff is true, actually. They burned incense and that was not satanic and all the things that claim, that
Incense and
we
myrrh, right? It's like
incense and
when
myrrh.
Christ was born, gold, incense, and myrrh, right?
And
And
what did they do? They followed the stars to go see him. So they were astronomers as well, and they read the star. Like what? And so nowadays we've flipped that all upside down and turned it around and made and society has made it into this evil thing, but it's not. Right. And
right,
neither is it to say that God's blood runs in our veins, that we're spiritual beings, that we have power. And if people like you and I, Vince, who were able to essentially transform through his power in us and exude that out, uh, and like
how
what
could you
else is there to
not believe,
say?
right? How could you not believe, right? It's just like
Exactly.
the miracles that happen every day.
Yeah.
Man, I could go off on a tangent on miracles
Straight
too,
up.
because I've had
Same.
I've had quite a few awakenings as well. All right,
Hmm.
so let's get back to the
Yeah,
book.
let's dive in.
Let's see. Trying to, okay, that was that one. Hold on, I'm so disorganized. I'll figure it out once I get a crew going. I'll get my show notes going and everything else. Okay,
Oh,
here
good.
we go. Uh, all right. So this is page 100, and this
Hmm.
is chapter 10, the chaos of healing, and it's like
Yes.
the first paragraph.
Mm.
No one tells you how disorienting it is to break free from a lifetime. Oh wait, sorry. Let me start over. No one tells you how disorienting it is to break free from a lifetime of survival. For years, chaos was my comfort and addiction was the chain that bound me. When sobriety began to settle in, I was gripped by fear, so profound I felt like even moments of peace might be traps waiting to collapse.
Mhm.
When I read that, I was like,
Mhm.
that's the fucking other shoe dropping. That's the
Yep.
carpet getting pulled out from underneath me. This is
Mm.
too good to be true. I'm gonna
Yeah,
fuck this up somewhere. Talk,
absolutely.
talk and walk me through that.
Love to. I would love to. So for me, I mean, I was so used to 23 years of chaos and crap happening and living in that victim state and that victim mentality and always reaching out to my friends for help or my family for this or that. And what chaotic event in my life had just happened that when things started to go well, I was always like, how long am I going to be able to keep it? Like what's next? What's waiting? And essentially what I started to realize was that I was afraid and fearful of my own success, right?
Hmm.
I was fearful that I would actually succeed because I had never been there before. I know what it was like to be in chaos and live in crazy times and where stuff's I learned how to deal with it. I mean, resilience was my middle name, right? But I was sick of the bounce back, right? And I just so when things started going well for me, I didn't know how to live uh, in that state of peace, right? And so I would find myself sitting there feeling like I was bored, essentially.
Yeah.
And what I call boredom, I now recognize is peace. I don't boredom I don't get bored. Life is too full for me now. I could literally go do anything at the drop of a hat, and I'm not bound to my house by an addiction or by not having the money or by not, I go outside today. I have friends today. I go to meetings today. I get out of my house. We go for hikes. I go to the gym. I go to the grocery store, right? I do stuff that healthy people do, right? And so I
Right.
don't have bored moments, right? I work, even laying on the couch, but I don't have bored moments anymore. It's all peace, right? But
We
that is a
just touched
scary space to be.
we touched
Mhm.
on that also. I don't know if we caught it in the recording or if it was in the green room. Uh my digital green room. Uh
Right.
but this is a fun adventure. I'm telling you, it's just like this whole like
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of it. I'm just throwing shit up against the wall to see what sticks, but
Yeah.
but I digress. I digress. But we were talking about being able to do the things that you're doing. Like I said, I was kind of laying out. Yeah, I went to did a couple of workshops with Al-Anon, and did this whole day in Al-Anon event, and then came home and walked my dogs and went for a big walk for 2 miles. And did stuff,
Sure.
and then came home and cooked myself dinner, and and now we're doing a podcast, and then tomorrow other healthy things, like pickleball in the morning and kickball in the afternoon. I got a
Totally.
double header, and it's like that boredom. But then coming home at night, and last night I went to dinner with a dear friend, and I came home and I didn't even turn the TV on. And I
Mhm.
jumped on the couch, and both my dogs, Malcolm and Angus, just totally dogpiled on top of me. And for
Yeah.
15 minutes, we just sat there and just chilled, right? And they were just like
Yeah.
happy that daddy's home. And you know, those moments, when I was in my disease, and when I refer to my disease, I refer to me being in that sick line of thinking,
Yeah.
because it wasn't my drinking, it was my thinking.
Yeah. For sure. Right. Absolutely.
I would
So
have
good.
never been able to enjoy moments like that,
Right.
and just realizing that holy smokes, right? These are the minutes and those moments that God has blessed me with, right?
Absolutely.
That
100%.
moment of reprieve. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
So good. It
let's see.
sounds
There
like you're
was
living and not just existing. That's the P.
right, thriving, right?
You're
And don't I
thriving.
still get him? I still, I gotta be careful, because I still have, that tendency of like, how could I get in some trouble today, right? It's like, you know, that guy's still behind me. It's like, but you sit down and you take a minute and you're like, okay, well, let's put this into perspective. I mean, and
Yeah.
people like me, people, places, and things still trouble me. And so,
Yeah.
I have to take those moments to realize that when those triggers, I hate using buzzwords, but when
Yeah.
I feel that anxiety start to well up, or that fight or flight feeling,
Hmm.
the lessons within the program of recovery help,
Hmm.
like pausing, right?
Oh,
And
for sure.
there's an acronym for that, and I'm probably going to misquote it, but it's like pause, action until serenity emerges.
Oh, so good. I love that. That
right?
is spot on. It's so true too.
So
Just
if
have
I can take enough
pause.
time to pause and just
Mhm.
chill until, and that might take 24 to 48 hours, depending on who pissed me off.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely, right? And like no doubt, because you life is unpredictable. You don't know. But I always say, let's pause for the cause. Who's the cause? Me. I'm the cause.
Oh, that's
You
a
know
good
what I
one
mean?
too. Right on.
Yeah. You gotta
That's
pause,
awesome.
man. So good.
Um, all right, so let's see. Self-worth. You mentioned self-worth in the book,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
That's a hard one to overcome. As a matter of fact,
Mm.
I even went through almost a year program working,
Mhm.
and this was outside of recovery programs,
Yeah.
dealing with self-worth and
Mhm.
being worthy. And it wasn't even until recently that I felt worthy enough to bow in front of Jesus. I mean,
Wow.
that it was like it was that that idea
Mm.
of being worthy
Yeah.
and or worthless was so ingrained in me that it
Mhm.
took years to just be able to say I'm worthy enough to bow in front of my Lord Jesus, right? And again,
Wow.
I'm not a Bible thumper in any way, shape, or form, but it
Right.
was
Same.
just like, it's just like when I fell
Man.
to my knees that first time, and like I said, it wasn't up until just maybe a year ago, right,
Wow.
where I was able
Yeah.
to do that. Talk to
Incredible.
me about your journey and how you started to overcome that shame and
Mhm.
overcome that self-loathing and
Mhm.
worthlessness and find yourself worthwhile.
So good. Guilt and shame is something that I believe at some point we all carry in some way, shape, form, or fashion, to some extent, right? And others, and some more, way more than others, right? And for me, mine was so wrapped up tight. It could have been, I could have felt like I was mummified in it, essentially, right? And it wasn't until, and everybody always says this thing, and you hear it, we all hear it all the time. Love yourself. And you're like, well, I am loving myself. I think I'm loving myself, right? Like
How the
I
fuck do I do that?
that's literally what I was saying. Vince. I'm like, well, I think I am, but how the fuck do you even do that? Like, how would you even, like, what does that even mean? Right. And when they were like, well, I can't explain it to you except to say that people who love themselves don't hate themselves, don't, you know, date people who treat them poorly, don't sleep around, because they're not for everybody. They love and respect themselves, right? They go to the gym, they eat well. It's because loving yourself essentially looks like what people would tell me, or my therapist and my counselors would tell me. It looks like you taking care of you as if it was your children or somebody that you love deeply. Like you want nothing but the best for them, right? So you don't want them dating the wrong person. You don't want them eating, McDonald's every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You want them to love and respect themselves. You want to see them do well in life. That's how essentially I had to start looking at myself, was that as if I was a close friend that I want nothing but the best for. And I had to look at it that from that lens, because I couldn't do it for myself yet. Right. It took me time. And so I had to look at it as though I started to treat myself the way that I would treat my best friend. Right. And what did I want for her? Nothing but the best. And the way I would treat my children, I want nothing but the best for them. So I started to do the things that I had hoped for. And I had to write this list of all these things. My counselor gave me an assignment and she said, I want you to write about your dream life. And I was like, yeah, okay, let me get right on that. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm like,
Yeah.
here I've been in my addiction all these years, and you want me to fantasize about a dream life, lady? Like, get real, right? And she was like, no, like she was serious. She was like, I want you to write your dream life and I want you to spare no expense. And I sat there and I was writing out these things, Vince, and I was thinking in the mindset of somebody who really loved themselves. Like, I want to have a nice car. I want to have a house that I own. I want to be a great mom to my kids, and not just a great mom. I want to be the mom that like makes them dress up at Christmas, right? And like we all
Yeah.
dress
The
alike and they're
pajamas.
going to,
Yeah.
oh, absolute
That
matching
was in the book.
pajamas.
The pajamas. Yeah. I
Hell yeah.
love that, by the way. I was like, because well, we could get into
Yeah,
the holidays because it's a rough
yeah,
time for a lot of people who are
it
addiction.
is.
Yeah, addicted. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
But that was like, I started to write this list as if I was the best version of me, essentially. And so, and how does that, and I would think to myself, well, how does this person act? Will they go to the gym? I want to be the woman that goes to the gym on a regular basis. I want to be the woman who, like, when she's eating her food, people are like, wow, or the way she dresses, like people are like, wow, she looks like a boss, right? Like and I envisioned this. And so every single action that I took, whether it was going to a meeting, getting the time I got up and went to work and didn't call in sick, the way that I parented my children, and the way that just the person that I embodied became a version of myself that loved herself. And I wasn't going to just allow anybody into that space. Like, I worked hard to become this version of myself, and I wasn't going to allow just anybody to mess up that piece that I created, right? And so, self-love doesn't come easy, and it does take time. It's a forever journey, but it's something that we have to put in and day out. And one more little component to that there was that, I, like you, very similar to your amazing book, right? The comparison around your father, and how you had all this, like, this resentment and bitterness towards the person that he was. I had a very, and I don't talk about it in my book, actually, um but my mother and I had I talk about it very briefly, a very tumultuous relationship growing up. And she did not treat me well. She didn't. And everybody in my family could see it and feel it. And I definitely could. And I had to forgive her and give her grace, because in the same way that I had hoped my kids would do for me. Right. And I had to just accept her for who she was, and understand that she was not going to change unless she wanted to, the same way I wasn't going to change unless I wanted to. And I was choosing change. And so, whether she choose to love me or not and treat me right, I, I was like, that's up to her. And the only person who's going to miss out on that relationship essentially would be her. But I wasn't going to, it wasn't going to matter to me at that point, because I was going to love myself the way that I deserve to be loved, and it wasn't going to come from an outside source. And so that was one of the biggest healing moments for me, was when I accepted her for who she was, and that I could not fix her or change her either, you know.
That you bring up a great point, because that's like what we talk about, the family disease of alcoholism, and a lot of people don't really understand what that means. And I touched on my uncle Sonny, who talks about genetic continuity, and the way he described it to me, I don't think I did a really good job of describing it in the book. However, the way it was described to me in the conversation, he was the greatest guy. We just would have hours and hours of just conversation going back and forth. And he said that all of your family's traumas, right? The good things, the bad things, it's like they get wrapped into your DNA.
Yeah,
And
so true.
and and so so your father's traumas, your mother's traumas, everything, from generations. And that's why I think that that chapter where I said sins of a father are passed
Mm-hmm.
down, to generations,
So
I
true.
honestly believe that that is. So if you have, like, for instance, in my case, my dad was a heavy-handed alcoholic, and I
Mm-hmm.
grew up in a very turbulent household, probably not different from many, many other people who grew up in alcoholic homes, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but that violence and that chaos is genetically filtered into me. I know that he grew up in a violent home, and it got passed down to me, and I can see it, that it has to stop with me, right?
Yes.
And that's, and now I haven't been blessed to have children, however, I can be a positive role model
That's
to the
right.
children in my life, like my nieces and my nephews,
Mm-hmm.
and other children that cross my path. I could be a positive change, be a positive role model. They don't have to um feel, authority. I
Yeah.
mean, it was really, well, and that had a lot to do, had a lot to do with my relationship with God in the beginning too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was just
Mm-hmm.
the authoritarian aspect of it.
Yeah.
So I
So
I so I had to heal. And so I think I'm going off on a complete tangent, but
no,
coming
you're doing
back,
great. It's good.
uh coming back, full circle to reconciling. I don't say forgiving my father, I say reconciling and realizing
Mhm.
that that genetic or that trauma, it's like I willfully and just wholeheartedly took it on, unknowingly took it
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Because all of his shame, all of his hurts, all of his trauma that he just pushed down onto me, I just
mhm,
completely absorbed it, which actually that's why I think it took 30 years to get to that point where it's like I could finally be subservient to God and kneel
yeah,
down and feel worthy of being in his presence, right?
absolutely,
So
absolutely,
it's like it was a full circle journey, like I said, that took
mm,
forever to figure out. But
yeah,
again, coming back to what you were saying about like the past, I needed all of this to get to here.
did,
He- and I needed to reconcile and forgive myself and understand that without any of that, I wouldn't be here talking to you.
100%. Yeah, 100%, and that's when people go, "Would you like, what would you change?" And I'm like, "Nothing." Nothing, nothing, the parts that hurt still, like, to think about is that my trauma, my stuff hurt my own children or anybody else that I loved, because when people say, "Oh, addiction just affects me." No, 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 no. 100% it does not. It affects anybody who loves you, right? That addiction affects anybody who loves you and cares for you. It affects them too, right? And so that's why they call it the family disease, right? But
Mhm.
we have to learn how to reconcile essentially with the past and those things, and honor them for the things that, for the time that we went through these things, because essentially we would not be who we are. I would not be a drug and alcohol counselor
Yeah,
today,
right.
you know.
Isn't that
and
a
and
crazy miracle though? I
it's a
mean, that's just
miracle.
nuts. Like we could
We're
actually sit down
living.
and talk
Yeah,
candidly about not
right.
only was I there, but like I have an idea of how to help you get out of where you're at.
100%. Like I know what worked for me, and I can give you suggestions. I can tell you what worked for me. And I, because of my experience, because of my strength, because of my hope, such as yours, right? Where we talk about it, not, and we, even our own books, we're like, oh my gosh, I relate so much. Although the stories are a little different, there's a lot of similarities, right? And we have a ton of similar. As I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, oh, that's the same. We have a lot in common, right? And
Your
you're
first
gonna
chapter, just like I was like, okay, I'm hooked.
right, you know what I mean? So, and it's because we have a lot of commonalities. And what is it? That our lives have a lot of trauma, traumatizing moments, but through that we were able to come out on the other side by our higher powers grace and mercy, to essentially awaken and become the people that we are today because of it, and help as many people as possible because of it and with it, right? I know what you're going through. I'm not you, but I have a feeling, because I've been there before. I know what that's like, and I can help you out. And with that, because of that, I have a really high success rate with my clients. Like, it would astound you, the success rate. My supervisors at any job I've ever worked for counseling always says this, and I always give God all the glory, because it was him working through me that created this version of me, right? And him in me that does this work, right? But when I my clients, like, my all of my bosses will say, how do you do it? What is the magic that you're sprinkling on these people? And I'm like, it's just me doing essentially the thing that they needed, which is telling them the truth. People call us white lighters or healers, and I don't heal people. I tell them the truth about themselves, and it's up to them to believe it. And it's that little spark that, people talk about, you just need a spark with that lighter.
Right.
You just need a spark, right? It's my spark that touches their spark, right? And that way you take two lighters, you ever put them together, right? And then you get
Yeah.
that fire. So that's what I do with people. And the same, you're just out here telling your truth, and I tell people the truth. And whether they choose to believe it or not is their healing.
The funny thing is that the stories are similar. I mean, and I don't mean like our experiences are similar, but the
Right.
feelings that we've all felt are
Yeah.
similar. Um,
Mhm.
and as we continue to move forward, it's like one of those things where it's like we start to realize that we're all one and the same
Yes.
irrespective of what our differences are. You had mentioned that spark, but earlier in this conversation, you were talking about, or we were both talking about, that having that spiritual connectedness. It's like
Mhm.
we are all connected.
Yes, we are.
Whether or not, it doesn't matter of whatever, where you came from, where you're going. I wrote in
Correct.
my book, this is where the asshole in me comes out, but I wrote in my book that every single one of us had an equal opportunity to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and I'm
Mhm.
paraphrasing obviously, or equal opportunity to be a drug addict, like what's his name, god, I forgot his name, it's in my book, Biden. uh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, right. And
Mhm.
so it's like every single one of us, no matter where we come from, but we have to realize that we're all interconnected because we
We
all
are.
have this opportunity to be either great or we have this opportunity to really screw ourselves up. And I
100%.
managed to screw myself up 100 times over, and yet some way, somehow through recovery, I found my way out of it.
That's
And the
great.
same for you as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
But it's not without work, right? People
right.
go, well, I just, because if I could have, I love a microwave society. You know what I mean? I like dinner done in 5 minutes or less, right? But right, and that's my truth, right? If I could DoorDash it, I would in 10 minutes.
Mm,
But the truth is that recovery and healing doesn't look like that. It's a journey that
mm.
you and I are still continuing to remain on, where you're constantly growing and evolving and changing into the best and highest version of yourself, right? And that should be the goal. People go, what are your goals? I'm like, to continue to evolve and to change and to grow, right? As the lessons will change throughout time. People, we're always, and people always say, I wish life was easy and recovery was easy and look like that. I'm like, that's a flat line. you know
Yeah,
that's
that's
that's what
dead.
happens. You're dead. I'm like, if that's what it looks like, because instead, life is going to happen. You're going to have the ups and the
Right,
downs, the mountains, the molehills, right? And sometimes you'll get those little moments of peace, of rest, but then you got to keep going.
right,
And that's the heartbeat of life. You know what I mean?
right.
That's what it looks like in recovery too. Even if you and I are successful at this point in our life, which I would like to say that both of us are, which is fantastic. It doesn't come without its moments, right? Where we
Exactly.
have our moments that we have to grow through and change through, so yeah.
What
That's all.
recovery's brought for me, and this is again, and I've said this over, AA got me physically healthy, ACA got me psychologically healthy,
Mhm.
and Al-Anon got me spiritually healthy. It's like I needed all three of them to kind of wrap it all together. But what's recovery as a whole has, as I don't have those extremely high manic highs that are just out of fucking control, or those depressive lows in a
Right.
very short, well, it's 30 years, like I said. So my life has got those little, rolling hills, right?
Hmm.
And the thing
Hmm.
is, the shoelace breaking doesn't freak me the fuck out anymore.
That part. That whole entire part, like, I don't lose my shit and go throw it
Right,
all away and go sit in a box of wine and call the dope dealer for the night in a hotel because the shoestring broke. You know what I mean?
right.
100%. And I turn to what works. I It doesn't even seem as bad, and if it does, I just call somebody, talk about it, or I go to a meeting and I talk about it, and then I get the opportunity to reflect on it and how I can come up with a solution, right? I stay in the solution today. That's the difference, not in the problem.
See, I mean, there's just a lot of things that bug me. People, places, and things still bother me. I mean, I'm not going to be honest about that. There,
Yeah,
just because of the fact, and I know that I can't do it by myself. But, and you mentioned
100%.
going to your meetings, and for me, my meetings. I mean, I go 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week, and then I do
Yes.
extracurricular stuff. And so, what I realized that is that I have to have my meetings because that is that place where it's like when I'm feeling like dog shit, even if I don't share or participate, just me being there is
Mm,
a testimonial
yep,
to the power of the program. Um,
absolutely.
and so just when you feel like the app, I mean, like I said, if it was, again, AA didn't turn out to be the solution this time around for whatever different reasons, but Al-Anon, the 12 steps, right? Recovery, right? That was where I found, like, I could go and I could just deflate.
Yep.
So if when the world is going to shit and everybody and every is there's chaos, I go to a meeting and I roll in there and I can just listen, and it gets
100%.
me out of myself. And then the beautiful part, and I know you've done this too. Almost anybody who's been in recovery has done this. Um, the fellowship afterward, because after that meeting,
Mm.
I
Mhm.
went out and I sat with a fellow member, and we went to go get coffee, and
Yeah.
we sat down and for another 2 hours, and we both talked about whatever it was that was bothering us.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the next morning, miracles fucking happen,
Every
you know.
time.
And
Every time.
he ended up getting out of his funk, right?
Mhm.
That he was in. The next day, he got some great news. He was employed again. And then the
Yeah.
next day, my dogs, we went on a walk and they did some goofy shit with the chihuahua that made me laugh and made me realize that, you know what?
Yes.
God
Mhm.
is good, man.
All the time. And every single day, right? And I love that you also talk about how it's like AA, NA, Al-Anon, right? And for some people, it's Celebrate Recovery or church or prayer, right? That does it for them. But no matter what, it's the fact that the whole point of that is and you finally found what worked for you, which was Al-Anon, right? Where you felt at home, right? And for some people, that's going to, like I said, AA, some people it's church, some people it's prayer. Just find, just so you know, just find something, find somewhere where you're connected to other people, because we don't do this alone. We can't. And God didn't create us to do this alone. That's why
Right.
there's so many of us, right? And what we end up doing is isolating, thinking that, woe is me, and we get stuck in the problem, and we get stuck in our heads, and we isolate. And then what we do is we keep people out of it. But all we really need is that connection with another person, right? And to feel like we're heard and seen, and solutions arise, So get connected with whatever it is that makes you feel at
There's
home.
there's a lot of ego involved when you can sit there and say, "Oh, I'm a lone wolf. I don't need anybody." Believe me, I was there. The reality of it is no. Every time I was left to my own, devices, I ended up getting myself in trouble. So I
Yeah.
know now, and like I said, it took a long while to get there, but I know now that it's like, no, this is where I belong. This is where I need to be. The people who are in
Absolutely.
recovery are my family. It was like all the people that I met. Okay, so I'm going to digress a little bit and give, and not that we're sponsored by them or anything like that. So I don't want any bullshit in the comments. Um, but the
Right.
recovery market, it's like the minute I
So
walked into
welcome.
I knew none of those people.
No.
By the time I left, I was like, "Love you, mean it," hugging everybody, just like it's like it's family, and it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Again, it doesn't matter where we're coming from or where we're
Mhm.
going, but we're all family, and that's the beauty
Right.
about recovery and finding the people, like you said. And it doesn't
Right.
matter if it's church or if it's what this program, that program.
Mhm.
If you are on a journey to help yourself and heal yourself, it's again, it comes back to that spiritual connected, that we're all connected. um,
Absolutely.
just a powerful testimony to how awesome this stuff is.
Yes.
Um, all right, so let's see. I talked about chapter. I want to get back to your book again. Um, okay, dead air. This isn't good podcasting.
You're
I'm just.
doing just great.
I wasn't telling my story to glorify the pain. Okay, yeah, that was it.
Mhm.
I wasn't telling my story. This is on page 112. I think it's still chapter 10. I
Mm.
wasn't telling my story to glorify the pain. I was telling it because someone had to speak for the woman in the back row, head
Yep.
down, afraid she was too far gone, for the
Yeah.
father who hadn't seen his children in years and didn't think he ever would, for the
Mm.
ones still trapped in the darkness I knew too well. This really hit home because I think this is why I'm doing this podcast, because
Yeah.
I need to get this out there to remove that stigma about
Yeah.
being an addict or being an alcoholic or being a
Mhm.
codependent, you know, to remove that shame.
Mhm.
Describe to me when you were there and you were doing that speaking engagement,
Mhm.
like it was obviously God, but I'm just going to let you tell your story.
Yes. Right. It's all him. I just, man, like even when you read that, it still almost brings me to tears to think about. Like, oh, it chokes me up still. Sorry.
No, you're
Ugh,
fine. This
it's
wasn't
just,
gonna be
ah.
easy.
It still just wells me almost to it brings me to tears because I think about how I felt being that person sitting in the back row, feeling like nobody could understand, right? Like life was happening to me and only me. And wanting it was like screaming from the inside, but silent, you know? And inside you're just screaming at the top of your lungs. And so whenever I'm asked to speak, as often as I'm asked to speak, I absolutely do, right? And I tell my truth the way that I tell it, because I don't want to hide behind these masks that we can all want to put on, right, to
Yeah,
protect ourselves from guilt and shame, which I can often still find myself wanting to do. Like when I'm going through something, I don't want to expose those parts of myself that feel vulnerable. Why? Because I get nervous that somebody will see that I'm not perfect, but that's just my guilt. That's my shame, right? That I have to transform. And how do we transform guilt and shame? By bringing it into the light,
right,
right? By shining the light on those dark spaces, right? And that's how we heal. And so if I have to rip off the band-aid to my soul and reveal my truth, which means that I'm going to tell people, and that's the woman in the back row who feels alone, and she probably just came in from copping off of her dope dealer and just wanted to get into church, or maybe she's homeless and just needed to get warm, and that's her truth. I want to talk to her. I want her to know that it's not hopeless. I want that guy to know that even if he hasn't seen his kids, that they're still thinking of him just as much as he's thinking of them, right? And that you can in fact create change. We are powerful individuals. And I tell my truth so that other people know that they are not alone, right? That it's not just happening to you. You are not just one special case out of all of these people, right? That what is happening to you is germane to you, but change can happen. And we are living, breathing, walking miracles. And if I can do it, 100% you can do it too. And I believe that, and I will believe that forever. And I will speak that truth as long as I can to anybody who will listen. If I can do this, and I was a ridiculous all day, everyday addict, right?
yeah.
If I can do it, you can do it. You just have to believe. You just have to believe it.
And that's the miracle, because prior to getting back into Alcoholics and this last time around, and having that epiphany that I had, I mean, I was, drinking anywhere from a bar liter to a half a fifth of booze, and it didn't matter what flavor. It could have been vodka, it could have been spiced rum, whatever,
Yeah.
and just doing all kinds of bad choices,
Mhm.
just to try to get a good night's sleep and pass the fuck out. To coming full circle and realize that that craving
Mhm.
disappeared. And we'll get into that a little bit more. I'm kind of jumping the gun.
Okay.
But it's like speaking to the person in the back, speaking to the adult in the back of the room. I mean, this is kind of why we're here, right? You and I are doing this.
Absolutely.
However, there is something going on with mental health
Mhm.
nationwide that I want to touch.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to get too knee deep into the weeds. However, we talk about homelessness and we talk about all of this stuff. However, there's a bunch of young kids right now are struggling on all levels, right? And it's like
Mhm.
we got fentanyl, we've got
Gosh.
a lot of, mental health stuff going on, and they're
Yeah.
they're all falling into these trappings. It's like if you were to go back and talk to yourself, or go back to a younger version of yourself, what would you tell them? How would you, I mean, what would that message be?
Mm.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and the reason why I bring this up is because, and I didn't write about this in the book, but my counsel, actually, a couple people asked me to do, and this is one of those things where I finally got around to do it after the third person told me I should try. It's like
Mhm.
write a letter to your young self, and what would you
Yeah.
say, right? And
Right.
so I guess that's kind of what I'm doing here.
Right.
However, it's like to our youth who are get falling into these trappings.
Mhm. I really like this question a lot because currently in my role as a drug and alcohol counselor, we are now opening up the doors to teenagers, right? Because addiction it's not just taking out adults, or we can't just treat adults. We have, like, let's get to the core of where it started for a lot of us, right? And just owning that truth. And the drugs that are out there today are not what was available
No.
to you and I. It
Right.
is far more dangerous. And the fact that it's social media, we didn't have these kind of worries, right? That alone can create mental health and reliance and dopamine hits and bullying and all the things that
Yeah.
come with that crap that you and I didn't have to deal with, essentially.
Right.
So and the fear of being liked, and how many likes did you get? Think about how that affects us as adults, and what that
Oh,
does in the mind of a teenager or a young kid who was too
self-betrayal.
jacked.
Hello.
Oh,
I had to change myself all kinds of different ways to make people like me.
oh, yeah, 100%, right? 100%. Right. And so it's not just the acid wash jeans that I need to buy to fit in. It's like these kids now, it's like it's next level for them, right? And so
Yeah.
my youngest son has, been diagnosed with autism, right? And so I've been very fortunate to learn how he loves and how he learns, which is different than me, which is what I love, right? He taught me, he didn't talk until he really didn't talk until he was really 5, like to form sentences, right? And so he taught me that love needs no words. And so, what the kind of love
Wow,
in
that's
in
actually
this
really,
profound, isn't it?
yeah, that's like you don't need, I mean, it's people need to hear I love you. I think that's important that
Correct.
but you don't necessarily need the actual words to,
No,
you could always show somebody.
because love is an action word. Show,
Right.
right?
Exactly, right? Wow,
Absolutely.
that's
Mhm.
I love this podcast. You learn something new every day.
This is one of the best conversations I've had in a long time, by the way. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity. The reason why I bring up love, though, and my son's special need, is because the same love letter that I would give to my own children is the one that I would give to the kids of the world today, and the same thing I tell my own kids, which is choose yourself, choose yourself over wanting to fit in, choose your truth over denying it for somebody else's sake, right? Um, don't try to fit in. Be yourself. Love yourself. If you need to change any part of you to be accepted, then they aren't your people, right? They're not for you. And drugs are not all drugs are good, right? Like, stay away from it. It has nothing, that all that is avoidance. And
Yeah.
and drugs are the symptom that something outside of you, that you're trying to change your world, essentially, that you don't like your world. And really what I'm hearing is that you don't like yourself. And if that's the truth, then we need to look at that. Drugs are not going to fix it. They're going to create bigger problems than, and they'll still be there, right? So you don't have to turn to that. And if you are struggling with your mental health, if you feel isolated, if you're feeling sad, if you don't know how to feel your feelings, right? If you're feeling like you're feeling too much, tell somebody. Don't be ashamed. Don't hide it. You don't have to, right? Not It's not like it was many many moons ago,
Yeah.
where it came with a lot of stigma and a lot of all the things. That's not there for us anymore, right? We can release the stigma and remove it by simply telling on ourselves, telling the truth. And if you can't trust your parents to say that, tell it to your guidance counselor at school, right? Your grandparents, if you trust them, just tell on yourself. Say, I'm
Yeah.
feeling this way, and it's okay to feel your feelings today. So I would tell them, don't believe the hype. You are the
Yeah.
hype.
That's really interesting because there's something that I don't know if we talked about social media, but it's something across. Sometimes there's good things that do come out of social media, and one of
Oh,
the messages, and I'm going to misquote it because I misquote everything. I don't have anything memorized. I suffer from CRS. I can't remember shit. Um,
great label.
but so it was something along the lines is like if the people you're around aren't vibing with you, don't change your vibe, change the people.
100%.
Right. And I thought, and
100%.
that hit home for because, for many years, and we talked about this early on, it wasn't until we were in our early teens It was just like we did some really dumb shit to ourselves so that we can
And
fit into
fit
a
in.
crowd who gives no two cents about us, right?
None.
And so when you're saying, when you're like, don't change you, just talk to somebody. Um,
Yeah.
Now there's a flip side to that coin too, because not all
Mhm.
guidance counselors are cut from the same cloth.
Correct.
I've been in and out of therapy as well over the last 30 years outside of Al-Anon. I did the
Yeah.
anger management thing, and I did a
Yes.
life coaches, and not every so how
Mhm.
does a young individual and because how does a young individual, I mean, because trust is a big thing,
It's a
right?
big thing. It's
So
huge.
how does a young individual, especially because they're so impressionable at that age, our minds aren't really fully developed, right? And we're already
Mhm.
dabbling in, weed or nicotine or alcohol or whatever it is that we're dabbling in. How what is a piece of advice that you can give to somebody who might be in that situation to help themselves discern? I mean, do you recommend talk if they can't talk to their parents, but they get like,
Mhm.
I guess let me lay out a scenario. You kind of give me your take on it. If I couldn't talk to my parents and my guidance counselor at junior high was, feeding me a bunch of bullshit because it wasn't feeling good, because you have a gut feeling. We
That's the
ignore
piece.
that shit. We
Yeah,
ignore
100%.
shit,
Man,
right?
sweep it under the rug, quick, fast, and in a hurry.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So like
Mhm.
what kind of a suggestion would you give? What kind of a suggestion would you give to that kid in that scenario that's like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I can't talk to excuse me, I can't talk to my folks, but my guidance counselor, I feel like he's just feeding me a
Like,
line of bullshit. What do I do
right,
now?"
right, like, totally valid, right? And you're right. Like, not every therapist, counselor out there is cut from the same cloth, and it's very important that that you find whoever you're vibing with, right? That you feel a connection with. And like you said, we feel it intuitively. We feel it inside. We feel it in our gut. We feel it in our, and the thing that we want to ignore, like, well, it's really not that bad, or maybe it's just me. No, no, no. If you're feeling that off and you can't vibe, or you feel like you can't trust the person to tell them the thing, right? Then you're not vibing well with them. So change guidance. You can put in a request at the front and say, hey, can I change, counselors? As you get now, you might not be comfortable with that, right? So who might you talk to? Is there another adult that you feel safe around? Maybe it's your best friend's mom. Maybe it's your best
Wow.
friend's dad, right? I know for me, like my best friend's mom, she man, that woman, I literally just got on the horn on Messenger and thanked her for my teenage years for the things that I could come to her with that I could not go to my own mom with. That woman, and I literally was just so grateful for her, and I got to tell my high school best friend this, and tell her to thank her mother for me, for being the substitute mom that I needed in those moments. So tell somebody, an adult who will listen to you, right, and seek support. Tell your best friends, right? Tell your closest friend if you feel close to them. Tell on yourself, right? And a big part of that, what you said, is both you and I both, all of this essentially kicked off with the desire to be a part of. A part of what? Right? A part of, like, what is it we felt like we were gonna miss out on, right? If
Right.
we didn't do the thing that everybody else was doing. Well, let me tell you're not gonna miss a thing, right? You're not missing out on anything. That's the hype, right? When I say don't believe the hype, that's the hype, is that the alcohol, the drugs, the smoking, ditching school, getting on social media, but all that's hype. It's all crap. And it's all designed to keep us separate, right? As much as you think it's going to make you a part of, all that is designed to keep us separate, and ultimately separate from yourself.
Yeah.
So if
Oh,
you,
yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest lie. That's the demon. I refer to my addictions as demons early on in the book. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's the demon that's just trying to basically take over and
Yeah,
separate you from who you really are. And basically,
yeah,
so I went through most of my adult life living a facade, right?
yeah,
And obviously I was in and out of recovery, and but it was just always like there was always this thing that was just like, who am I competing with? right?
Right.
Who am I throwing, who am I trying to fucking impress?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so afraid to go outside. Oh, I have to have these jeans and I have to have this shirt. And you know what? Everybody's going to this party and I really, for what? For what? I now, am I friends with these people on Facebook today? A lot of them, absolutely, from high school. I'm going to own my truth. But the thing is,
Memories. I mean,
yeah, for
there's
sure.
nostalgic. I mean, they weren't all shitty. I mean, it was like,
No,
but there was
a
some
lot of good
nostalgic
people.
value to it.
But when I was in my addiction and I was homeless and literally down and out and in the hospital, like combating that overdose that almost killed me, uh, not one of them was there. You know what I mean? So at what point, but they were there but they're all there now to see me in the
And the
in the in
success.
the broader in a
Right.
successful,
Yeah.
way. And they're all telling me how proud they were of me because a lot of them saw me in my addiction in high school, right? And although I like to think I
Yeah.
was well put together, I was a hot mess then too. And
Yeah.
that's the truth,
That's so
right?
funny because that reminded me. I remember the exact party. It does timeline doesn't matter, but I think we were seniors in high school. And you know how your high school, everybody's like at a party, we're all getting drunk, we're all having whatever it is that we're doing, but we're still signing our annuals,
Yeah.
right? And we're
Yeah.
doing that thing. And you know how they have in the annual, it's like most likely to succeed, most likely to be a runway model, whatever it is. It's like
Totally.
we had an unofficial version, and I was voted most likely to be the alcoholic.
Damn. Ouch. You're like,
Wow.
man,
Wow.
that's what you guys want
Right.
for me? Damn it, right?
Right.
Totally. Mm-hmm.
You
For
know,
sure.
and just like all the dominoes, it all fell in
Yeah,
line.
absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
I could sit there and I could shit all over that memory.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that's my reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's everything that I needed to go through to get to here, right? And
Yes.
so, you know, uh, believe me, there are some times where it's like I do wish I'm not, I do wish that maybe I could have learned some of these lessons earlier and
Yeah.
avoided some of these tragedies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But at the same,
Absolutely.
but again, it's like it's one of those things where it's like I'm grateful for learning it now because
Mm-hmm.
now I have the wherewithal, I have the skill set, and I
Yeah.
have the experience to actually share it and get it out
Mm-hmm.
there, right? And
Absolutely, buddy.
so and the
Absolutely.
resources to make that
To do-
happen and tell my
Yeah.
story. So
One of the therapists that I work with said something so profound and it was so simply said. And he said, I wasn't ready until now. And I was like, oh shit, like until now. Because yeah, until now, I don't think I would have been ready until now had I not gone through all the things that I like if I had like there is no way I could be this version of myself in my 20s. Absolutely not. There is no way that you and I would have even thought to have written a book in my 30s. There's no
right
way.
there,
I,
yeah,
I
I wouldn't have had the capacity to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely not. And there's no way that I would have been sitting here even I wanted to say a year and a half ago, ready to have conversation like this on a podcast, right? But until now, because now is the time when I was ready.
That
So
reminds me, and it could be a Chinese proverb, but that really reminds me of the teacher will reveal himself when the student is ready.
student is ready.
Something is like
Yes.
that. It's like, when you're
Yes.
ready, and again, there's another way of saying that too. It's like God will reveal himself when you're ready.
100%. And both are
It's
true.
like
Yes.
you have to be ready to accept the information in order,
Yep.
to receive
Mhm.
it and change and make those changes. So
For sure.
this is actually a good segue into this next question. So I've always been a personal believer, and I think I even mentioned it in my book. And I wrote it down and I said, faith without works is dead,
Mm,
right?
100%.
So in your experience, when it comes to your own personal strength and the
Mhm.
spiritual, I kind of have a feeling I know the answer to this, but I just want you to share it because I think it's important. your own personal strength with the spiritual reliance that you have in recovery. uh,
Mhm.
Like, where is that, like, as far as like percentages, how Adriana manages it, and all of that other good stuff?
Very good. Well, thank you for that. No, so great, great question. It's 100%. I would not be who I am without my relationship with my higher power. I could not get through. I'm sure I could, but we've seen what it looks like when I bumbled through my life without my connection to my higher power, right? And so faith without works is 100% dead, right? So I have to do the work, and doing the work looks like prayer. It looks like, when I don't know the answer, that I, can sit with myself. And sitting with yourself is a big component to this too. Meditating, right? People go, I need to meditate, right? Well, it doesn't always have to look like that. It can look like you waking up in the morning and just laying in bed for those few moments of connecting with your higher power. So my life, everything I do, I have to stay spiritually connected to my higher power with 100%. I ask for guidance every day. Even through before this podcast started, like, please help me, Holy Spirit, Spirit guides, Heavenly Father, Father God, Lord King Jesus, and guide my words, and guide this conversation so that it reaches and touches as many people that need to be helped by it, right? And so, because if I sat there and I didn't do that, then it's going to be about me, right? And my ego and my pride come into it, and
Right.
how I'm, received. It's not about you receiving me and my words. It's about you receiving the one who sent me to speak them, right? And he's speaking through me, and he's speaking through you, Vince. And may those words touch people on the inside, right? And I pray over my work every day, over my children, how I interact with my children. Because if I'm not all spiritual and spiritually fit for the day, trust me, and that does pop out at times, right?
And
Then I'm
oh
sitting in
yeah.
judgment, right? And I'm like, I would never wear that. And I'm like, I can't believe they wore that. And I could never do something like that. Absolutely 100% I would. And as a matter of fact, I'm sure I did in my addiction. Right. But when I get as I stay spiritually connected, I can work towards refraining from judgment, and refraining from fear. And I can stay true to myself as, what would Jesus do? WWJD, right?
Right.
What would you want me to do in this moment, Lord? Would you want me to sit here in judgment and be all nasty? Would you want me to withhold the truth and act like I'm better than everybody in this room, like I've never been through anything? Or would you want me to tell my truth? So that I can talk to the person in the back row, so that I can speak to that kid who at 14 is going to get ready to do their first line of blow, or sleep with that boy, or sleep with that girl, not that they want to, or hide the fact that this kid over here is hiding the fact that they're gay, right? Out of fear. No, it's okay to be yourself. Just be you,
Right.
right? So that's why, I think spiritual connectedness is so important for me, because I would not be who I am and guided the way I am to do what I do. It would always be me just looking to me. Right?
Right.
I don't have all the answers. I'm not God. There's only one. I don't want to be him. He's got a big ass job.
Exactly. Well, through meditation and prayer, we make a conscious contact with God. And I love the word, especially in that step, which 11th step, if I remember correctly. The conscious contact. It's like I have to make that conscious effort to maintain that connection to God, right? And
Every day.
so, and for me, it's a practice because again, even over the 30 years, it's like I said prayers, and I said, "Oh, help me out of this one," and all that, and I developed over the 30 years a verbal conversation style of prayer where
Same.
I yeah, right. Like I remember before I got my divorce, a few years ago, I was in the car, I was driving to work, I was working the second shift, and I was having this conversation because I was in a really interesting spot, and I was asking him, "What do you think, God? Do you think I need to get a divorce?" And then I left it at that. And then 2 weeks later, my ex-wife now had the
Mhm.
courage or the balls or the wherewithal or whatever, however you want to say it, to actually say she wanted a divorce. And of course,
Right.
me being me, and I'm on a smart ass, basically said, don't let the door hit you with a cord large split you. I'm like, get the
Yeah.
fuck out.
It wasn't all
But
healed back then.
I mean, I was in recovery. I was in between, and and I think the tragedy in our marriage, and I didn't really write too much about this. I mean, I wrote about my marriage, um, but I didn't really get too much into the weeds. Um, but the tragedy in our marriage wasn't the fact that I fell out of love, is that I believe that we were completely indifferent to each other.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I hear you.
in the beginning it was all lust and rose colored glasses and trophy wife and high wage husband and quality, our big giant house and
Picture. The
all of the
picture.
bullshit. Right, exactly. It was all the
Picture. Mhm.
bullshit. And by the time it was all said and done, if I had seen her walking, on the street, I probably wouldn't have given two shits about her. And
Yeah,
that was the tragedy, right?
that's
Is that
so heartbreaking. Yeah,
yeah, and it's not anything that I'm proud of. Obviously,
of
when we
course.
first get into divorce, I was still kind of in my disease and in my denial.
Right.
But it was just kind of like after, I had done my fourth step and walked through my book.
Yeah.
There's still probably like six other chapters that I didn't include. Did I tell you I was going to do a second revision?
Yes, which I look forward to, which is gonna
Yeah.
be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm excited to, get it going. And so I'll probably be adding a little bit more of that stuff and some of those realizations. But yeah,
Great.
that was the tragedy at the very end. It was just like we're completely
Absolutely.
indifferent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, again, it's not a regret or anything. That's what had to transpire for me to get to where I'm at. So,
Absolutely. Thank you for
yeah.
sharing that. That
Oh
was
yeah,
huge.
absolutely, for sure. This is kind of what this is kind of what this is about. It's like
It
I
is.
can't be afraid anymore. I gotta use my
Exactly.
voice. That was another thing that in writing the book, um using my voice.
Yeah.
And that's a segue into the next question. It's
Hmm.
like I again, a lot of this I kind of already know the answer to because I read your book. Um, but at the same time, our audience needs to know. It's like how are you utilizing your voice not only through your counseling, but
Hmm.
right through because we have to practice these principles in all our
All of our
affairs.
affairs. All of our affairs. All of them. Absolutely.
And it's a son of a bitch when you have to. It's like, damn it.
Like, well, I might as well just go. Right. Absolutely. No, I love that you asked. I have been just like you, very fortunate to be invited to do, even as tonight, to speak and own my truth and talk about my book and talk about my experience. And so I went through a program called St. John's Program for Real Change, following my 90 days in treatment. And this program was run by Michelle Steve at the time. She was the prior CEO of St. John's Program for Real Change, which is a program for women and children and women trying to get their lives back on track. And it's a vocational program where these women are including myself at the time, taught to, make simple as make your bed every day, eat breakfast every day, go to the gym and work out, like go to work, take your kids to daycare, sit there and do their homework after school with them, do chores, all the things, collaborate with other women and actually build form and friendships and go to NA and AA meetings. So it gave me a structured way of living. And and while I was healing on that journey with my kids in that program, Michelle Steve, who had invited me back there, you'll hear in my book for like the fourth time, right, which was my truth. She loved me, and she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. She saw that I was a great public speaker, and that I had a story to tell, and I said it, and I would tell my truth. And so she would take me and invite me to speak my truth, and then became a success story out of that program, essentially time after try, and she took me and would she wrote a book herself called Answers Behind the Red Door, and she placed my story in it. And it was in that moment when she was like, I thought to myself while reading my story in her book, I was like, well, why don't I write my own? Right. And I was journaling and journaling and journaling. Right. And I was like, this is, so that's where that was born. And then, you know, when she would invite me to speak at these public events, you know, 3,000 people at a gala or at a polo event where people are donating to this charity and to this program, and you know it's televised on the news. And so I just remember being so nervous, but and all of a sudden the nerves would be gone, right? And I would just get out there and speak, and I didn't even realize I was capable of this. So Michelle Steve has really a huge shout out to her. She has invited me to go speak publicly. It started in AA and NA for me too, right? Getting up in
Right.
front of our people and just telling my truth, and being able to express that in a safe space and not feeling shame or guilt around it anymore. Right. Which is where I got to practice that in these spaces. And then again, going into these huge spaces, 3,000, 4,000 people on a mic and telling my story again and not feeling guilt or shame around it. Instead, I found it to be I'm a survivor, right? I'm a comeback story, right? And so now I've gone before Congress and spoke at Congress level, and I'm a huge advocate and philanthropist for homelessness, addiction, right, mental health. And I, you know, as recent, and I've gone on, you know, Fox 40 News. There's a story about me in their column, C-SPAN, and so I'll speak at to whatever degree that where people can hear me, because change begins with us, right? We can
Right.
be the change in the world that we want to see. And
Oh my
the most
God. Amen. Amen.
right, we can be the
Yeah.
change I want to see. And
Be the change you
recently,
want to see in the world. Absolutely. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And most recently, Michelle Steve had invited me to go sit before our city councilwoman who had just been voted in. And I got to sit at her round table with her new board of supervisors. And I told her my story. There was not one dry eye in that house. And I got to tell her what I felt was needed in the county of Sacramento to bring about change. And do you know that right now in Sacramento County, that her and her board of Mrs. Rodriguez and her board of supervisors have brought about some real change along with Governor Newsom, and they are creating programs with housing, with wraparound services, with counseling and therapy and mental health and psych, right, where people can get all encompassed
If
treatment.
that, I mean, there, politics aside, if something like that would get off the ground, you know, and the way you described it, and you just tell me if I'm wrapping my head around this correctly. Like we have assisted living for the elderly, but if
Yes.
so the way you describe that, is that kind of an assisted living environment or neighborhood for people who have homeless and addictions and that type of thing? Is that what you're
It
telling
is.
me?
It is. Wraparound services, it's all encompassed. Like, literally. So what was happening before is that we were opening up housing, and we're asking much of people. You're giving them housing, you put them in there, and they're struggling with mental health and addiction, and then you're kicking them out because they're drug addicted, inviting their friends and not paying their rent because they have mental health. What are we doing, right?
Right.
With their checks, essentially, right? And so, and then when these places get overwrought with all of that, then we shut them down and start again, right? All
Right.
we heard about the hotel movement where we were putting people in hotels. How is that any different? And so what this will now incorporate is that people will come in there and they have mental health, but you also add a therapist and a psych, so that they're taking medications and you're monitoring to make sure that they're taking their medications every week, right? And if they're not, then they're sat down and asked what's going on with you that you're not taking these meds. So they're held accountable. They bring H&I meetings on site where these
Nice.
people can then go to a meeting in their community with their community and work on their recovery there too, right? You have a therapist that you go, and a case manager that if your kids need doctors and Medi-Cal, or you need aid, that you are coordinating with a case manager to help you with those things if you want to go to school. So it's wraparound, so it's everything that you need in one spot while you're trying to get your life back on
That's
track.
awesome, man. I really hope that that gets off the ground for you. That would be. I'm praying for it.
Amazing.
That That would be awesome. Because I mean, obviously with fentanyl and everything else that I mean, just all of the
Yeah.
things we talked about, all of the addictions, all of the dopamine hits, and everything that's going on today, it's like
Yeah.
we need something. We
We need
definitely, yeah, for sure. And God, that's such a great way of maximizing your voice. Oh, there was a side thing that I was thinking of.
okay.
So if there is one thing that you will gain out of going to an AA, and this is just a statement. I'm not, but out of AA, out of NA, or any 12-step program that you choose to go to, you will definitely gain the confidence of public speaking.
100%. 100% over there
If
telling
there's
random
one
people your
skill set,
stuff.
if there's one fear in your life, you will definitely overcome the fear of public speaking.
Absolutely, right? So I'm going to go into a room full of people I don't know and tell them my deepest, darkest truths. And you know what? I'm going to look around and be like, oh, and they're like, me too. And I'm like, look, I'm
We're gonna
this.
handle this shit.
You're going to be
This is no
okay.
big. Yeah, it's not a big deal. I love it.
Totally.
Let's see.
Totally.
So reflecting on your memoir, like, wait, hold on. I
Yeah.
think there's one other bookmark that I had, and my note on this was discipline. And
Okay.
this is on
Oh.
page 135, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we touched on this, and this has to do with responsibility. We talked about it earlier, but discipline is the highest form of self-love. It's not
Yep.
about punishment, it's about devotion. It's saying
Hmm.
I love you too much to let you stay stuck. It's
Yeah.
showing up when you don't want to. It's putting down the fast food, putting on your gym clothes, and walking into the gym for 15 minutes, even when
Mhm.
people look at you sideways. And then
Yes.
again, my note was the discipline.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, and then I'll share a little bit about my experience.
A discipline and just discipline to me is the highest form of self-love. Just like on the counterpart, the highest form of love for others is sacrifice. I'm gonna right. And so
Right,
for my children, I will sacrifice the version of myself that loved to kick it, party, and cut up so that I can be their mother because I love them so much. I want them to know that I choose them, right? And the same for me. I love myself enough not to give myself McDonald's every night. I love myself to make enough that I'm going to discipline myself to go to the gym even when I don't want to, because although it doesn't feel good in the moment, I love the results and how it makes me feel, right?
right,
I'm going to discipline myself enough to go to that meeting. Even if every part of me is like, I want to lay in bed and not go, I'm going to go, whether it's on Zoom or it's like outside to a meeting hall. Why? Or I'm going to go to church. Why? Because I love the results, right? You can't, oh, if I stay stuck in how everything makes me feel all the time, well then I'm going to be like I'm just going to stay stuck, right? Cuz there's going to be a lot of the times that I don't feel like doing something that's good for me. I don't always feel like drinking all these things of water every day, right? But I
right.
do it because it makes me feel better. I become the best version of myself because of it. Right. And so you can't always go, feelings aren't facts. And you'll hear that in the rooms all the time, right? Feelings
Yeah.
are not facts, right? But they will eventually pass. And there's going to be days where I absolutely do want to think, but discipline comes in and kicks into gear when you actually don't want to do the thing. You do it anyway. Why? Because it's the right thing to do.
Okay, so that's a really good segue to the. Okay, so you, like me, are an addict, and it just depends on what addiction we attach ourselves to at any given time. How do
Yeah.
you find the balance? Because I've been in scenarios and I've done this to myself, and I'm wondering how you manage it. But
Hmm.
I've done things where it's like, all right, I'm going to go on an 18-mile bike ride in the morning. Then I'm going to go play 3 hours of pickleball. And then I'm going to go do this and this and this. It's like
Hmm.
how I had to deal with that. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you, but I want to know how you deal with like overdoing it. Where do you find your balance? because that's a hard one too. It's like, yeah, we're doing something healthy, but when you overdo it, it's like, how healthy is it?
How healthy is it, right? Well, because and here's how you know it's because it's taking away from something else, right? So if it's taking away from your downtime where you because everybody should have downtime. And if I'm not able to sit with myself, we have a problem,
Right.
right? Right.
Okay. All right.
So I need to be able to sit with myself and enjoy my company. And if I can't, why would anybody else enjoy my company? Why? Because I'm always on, because I've always got things to do. And we can all get out of balance. Why? Because addiction comes in all shapes and forms, my friend, and it
Hmm.
is cunning, baffling, and powerful
And
for a reason.
powerful.
Why? Because I will sit there and tell myself that if I work from sun up to sundown, I can make the excuse that it's because I'm working. But I'm not paying attention to my kid, am I? And then if I'm going to the gym on top of that and I'm like not taking him with me and I'm like, "Oh, but I'm doing this for myself." Sure, like I said, it can be cunning, baffling and powerful, right? But here's how you'll know that you're out of balance is because something in some area of your life is suffering, right?
Yeah.
100%. And so if it's you, it's because you're not sitting with yourself long enough, right? If
Oh,
it's your children, it's because you're taking away from them. So take a look at that and recalibrate and ask yourself, where am I overdoing and where am I giving too much for the sake of telling myself it's because it's good for me, right?
right.
And start to recalibrate and balance and pull back
Well,
in that area.
so for me, and you're saying the same thing, but we're gonna say it different because I got my
Totally.
Vinceisms. But the thing is when I find myself having to distract myself, it's like I
Mhm.
have to look at what am I avoiding? And
Yes.
usually it's like, what are you trying to ignore, or what are you procrastinating about, or what are you trying to not to do? Like this last week, I mean, I'm
Hmm.
gonna admit this,
Tell on
but
yourself
my
right
yeah,
now.
my so my garage is just getting filthy, and I have a metaphor in
Oh,
regards to the
that's a big
garage.
deal.
I
Yeah,
right, it's huge, right? For me, so having a filthy
especially for you.
garage, yeah, having a filthy garage, it was just like, and I kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, and I finally this week, in between work and the things that I need to do, I finally took care, but I took it in chunks. And I think
Yes.
that's kind of the story that you and I need to tell and express, is that
Mhm.
we don't have to swallow this pill, and we could take bites out of it, and every little
Absolutely.
bit of improvement that we make. And so eventually after 4 days, I got my garage clean and I could actually fit my truck in it. So it was pretty,
Beautiful.
I was like,
Well
I felt good
done.
about myself, right? It's just
You
like those
should.
little victories, right? It's just as easy as
Absolutely.
getting your garage clean, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Those are those things that
absolutely.
build and empower and bring out the courage in you every
Mhm.
single day. So,
Absolutely. And even avoiding it, right, was like the piece, right?
oh,
And that's the
yeah,
piece. And what
that's
am and it just and why am I doing that? Am I doing that to almost like torture myself, right? So I can
all
sit
right.
there and like feel sorry that I have to do this thing, and it's just like this weight that's bearing on me. So that act of avoidance is, of course, it's almost as if you want to hold on to it. Like, what am
Right.
I really doing this for? Am I doing this so I can sit with the bitterness and resentment that I'm going to carry against myself and the self-loathing that I'm not getting the thing done and like sitting in that self-pity city, right? Party of one.
Right. I
Or am I
like
going to
that.
climb out of You're
Self I
welcome.
never heard, I don't think I've heard self-pity
My man.
city. Party of
Yeah. My
one.
man gave me that one. I got to credit him for that one, right?
I love
Um,
it.
and he's like, "Don't sit there. It's population one." Um, he says that to me
uh,
all the time. But that's where I came up with the whole like go to the gym, even if it's for 15 minutes and people are looking at you sideways. I'm not going for them. I'm going for me. Right. And
right.
so and eventually I got up to going for the hour and sometimes it would even get to two. Right. But the piece was is that I had to take it little bits at a time that I could digest. And if I sit there long enough, I'll start telling myself stories. We start creating narratives in our brain, essentially,
Yeah.
Vince, where it's like, well, if I was like so and so, they'd already have it done. If I was better, I wouldn't be, if I was stronger, if I had my stuff together, if I wasn't so this or so that. And so we have to climb out of that stinking thinking essentially
Yeah.
and tell ourselves the truth. And the truth is that today I'm willing to do this much. And if I can do this much, then I'm at least working towards my goal.
And see, this brings us to what we were talking about earlier, and because you were talking about just being able to do the next right thing, right? Just being
Yeah.
having this little discipline, this little thing that I could do. For me in the book, I talk about, especially after my second DUI, it was just brushing my teeth
Yeah.
was just a small victory. And
Yeah.
again, referencing Jordan Peterson. Now, obviously, this was 30 years ago. He published this book maybe about 10 or 15 years ago. But
Mhm.
the 12 Rules for Life, The Antidote to Chaos, I think is
Mhm.
the title, if I remember correctly. But he talks about doing or making your bed. And I think I referenced that in the book, hashtag make your bed.
Which is
you
funny
know,
because that's my thing. That was my thing.
right.
I made my
Exactly.
bed.
But this was
Yeah.
like 30, yeah, 30, again, this was like these are those little things, those little victories that will give
Yeah.
you that courage to do the next right thing. And this is
Yeah.
what I think this is what recovery is to me. You don't have to ingest all 12 steps. I mean, if you're okay, let me qualify that. Early in the early days of Alcoholics Anonymous, because of the severity of what alcoholism was, Bill W. and Dr. Bob would sit down and literally go through all 12 steps within 48, as the alcoholic was detoxing. So if
Hmm.
you are in dire straits, it's probably recommended to keep your mind off of things to go through all 12 steps, in a 48 to 72-hour period,
Right.
and do it with somebody who's trusted, like a trusted physician or a close friend or something.
Yeah.
Um, in Al-Anon, it's a little bit more relaxed, right? But going through the 12 steps and being able to go at it in your own pace is actually for me. What it did is it allowed me to actually enjoy those victories, because when I
Hmm.
was younger and in my addiction and in my own head, I wasn't allowed to celebrate my victories.
That part.
And
Yeah.
so that was, and so going through and even up to, being a full on adult and finishing my graduate program, it was
Hmm.
like I finally got a minute to celebrate something that I did, something that I wanted to do. And just like I said, cleaning my garage, for
Yeah.
me this week, that's a win-win.
You feel like my chest is all out. Like I feel
Right?
good about.
It's like I'm pumped up. My garage is clean.
You did it, and those are the victories, and I love, and it's healthy behavior begets healthy behavior. If I start going to the gym for 15 minutes every week or every day or every week, I'm gonna like want to buy those really cute stretch pants, right? And if I buy those cute stretch pants, I'm gonna want to eat a little healthier, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna cut back on the Starbucks. I'm not gonna eat maybe I have a salad or two this week. And then what does that pour into? Well, that made me feel really good. So what do I want to do that again. I want to do more of it. Why? Because we as recovering addicts can get addicted to anything, even feeling good, right? And so I'm going to want to do more of what makes me feel good. So yeah, I hear that. I love
That's
that.
that's yeah, that's okay. So this is all amazing stuff. We're at 2 hours.
Yes,
It's 9 o'clock. I want to be
it's
conscious of your
time.
time. You got anything for me? Any
um,
questions, curiosities?
I feel like I do have a couple questions as we begin to wrap up here, because yeah, we've just jam packed this 2 hours, which has been
It's
fantastic.
like taking information through a fire hose.
Right, which that's what I love about it. I'm hoping that people will see this and see how on fire for recovery and life that both you and I are after, it's been 8.5 years for me. How long for you now?
In and out for 30 years. My
Uh,
first I wasn't even 21 and I got my second DUI. And
yeah,
so
right?
yes, right.
See what I'm saying?
And then all of the other psychological,
Stuff that
psychotherapists,
comes
the
with,
life coaches and everything else that went between. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm a relapser too.
Yeah, and that's the pieces that we're essentially looking for. It's an act of avoidance of self. And so I'm hoping that when people see this, that they will see that it's never too late, because we're up there in age, right? We talk about having 23 years and 30 years of this and that and addictions and so on and so forth, right? So it's never too late. I'm curious, what makes you get up every day and put your best foot forward, even when it's hard for you? Like, what's your motivators right now?
So prior to writing the book and getting into recovery, I was extremely nihilistic. I even mentioned that I was suicidal and I actually had absolutely no purpose. Um, when I first started writing my four step, this is my fourth step. It's cleaned up. It's definitely cleaned up. But my fourth step went from 4,000 words to 6,000 words to, whatever it is now, like 100 and something thousand words. Um, and so that gave me a purpose. It wasn't until a couple of weeks ago I was having a conversation. He's a deacon at his church. I'm not going to blow his anonymity, but I was talking to my supervisor and we were having this chat, and and I was having an issue at work. Again, people and places and things still bother me. And we sat down, and he said, and I said, "What keeps you getting up?" And we're both people of faith, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of wrapped it all up. He's like, I don't serve anybody but God. And when
Mm-hmm.
he told me that, I was just like, and then talk
Mm-hmm.
about more God shots. Usually have to hear the message 3 or 4 times later.
Mm-hmm.
God, why can't I? Denzel Washington. I saw a YouTube snippet, like one of those little TikTok things, and he said
Mm-hmm.
the same damn thing. It's like I don't serve anybody but God,
That's
right?
right.
And I was like, and I if I believe, I think, and I'm not spreading rumors, and it's like I don't know for a fact, but I think he's also in recovery as well. Denzel
Mm.
Washington. I don't know that for a fact, so if somebody wants to put it in the comments and say yes or no or whatever and correct me and fact check me, that'd be awesome. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but after that, right? And again, realizing that I'm worthy to get to the crux of it's like when I get out of bed in the morning, it's all about serving him.
Yes. Amen.
Um,
Agree.
I
I
don't
love.
have children, but I have my dogs. And it's like
Yes.
I wake up in the morning and I give grace to the old man upstairs and say, thank
Mhm.
you very much for opening my eyes and putting air in my lungs so that I can feed these expenses.
Yes. And these fur babies, right? And
Right,
this,
exactly,
but
right?
also because look at the work that you're doing, even writing your book. And here in this moment, we're both speaking our truth. That's us serving him for the greater good of to reach more people, which are essentially his people, our people, there, it's us out there, right? That's you in sitting, out there in the back row. That's me sitting out there in the back row. And that's what we're doing. And in that is serving him every day. I live for an audience of one. So I always work and be a mom and be I have a fur baby. He's so great. Right. And I be a significant other and a friend and a counselor, knowing that I work for him essentially. Yeah.
Every single action, and having that, we talked about having that conscious contact, but that's really, that kind of put the wind back in my sails when my boss told me that, right?
Yeah.
Because
So good.
it's so easy to lose faith in humanity.
Mm.
But this was another cool thing that came out of recovery too. It's like trust God, love people,
Mhm. Oh, so good. That's all we're
right?
called to do. We're not called to judge anybody. We're not called to, tell them what to believe or how to live. We're literally called to love. That's it. Don't always have to agree, but we are called to love.
Right.
Point
And
blank
that's
period.
and so I guess that was a very nutshell answer. It was just like I've found my calling in this whole, like you said, writing the book, getting the word out,
Mm,
trying to remove that stigma off of
yeah.
recovery. It's just, I mean, I understand it's Alcoholics Anonymous. I understand, almost 82, 3 years ago when the program, I understand that stigma, but there's just too much going wrong right now that I can't keep my mouth shut. Plus, I got the
Yeah.
gift of gab. Why not use it?
100%. Can't keep quiet. Absolutely not. Right? Let's get loud about it. Let's get loud. 'Cause I'm proud of
That's
you today. I'm proud that I've overcome this thing and that we beat the bonds of addiction, right? And overcame that death. And there's so many who haven't, including my younger brother who passed away. And he lost the battle this last year to addiction. So
oh,
and essentially it's because he didn't do the one thing that he knew he could. He could have called me, he could have reached out. And I always find that people don't because they don't want to be talked out of it. They want to make that choice. And essentially, for us, it is life or death. And if you don't think it can happen to you, it can.
very
You
easily.
know,
Very
very
easily. It's
easily.
so
So,
easy to slide that down that thought process. Um,
100%. Yeah. Thank you for
cool.
this time today, Vince. Thank
I
you for this
appreciate you taking.
opportunity. So great to have this conversation with you. It was really
uh,
great. Thank
I,
you.
I loved it. Thank you so very much. Let's see. Wait a minute. Oh, there's one more question. I know what it
Sure.
is, and I'm drawing a blank. Oh yeah. How do people get a hold of you? Talk to me. Brag about your book.
Let me brag on my book for a second. So my book can be found, it's beautifully broken and wonderfully put back together. It's out
See if I
now
can
on
get.
Amazon. Yeah,
Is it in focus? There it
yeah,
is.
look at how marked up it is. I love that. Thank you. And
Oh,
it
I was
can
tearing into it.
so great. I love that. So out on Amazon now, also available in Kindle. And then of course it has my email address in there if you should ever have any issues to report. But I always like to inform people too that you can reach out to me if you really, really need to, because I'll respond back. Promise you I will. So that's how you can reach me. And you
That's
can also see me
outstanding.
on Facebook, Instagram, all the things, TikTok, right? But I'm a really private person on there, so it's generally only people that I know or that are, but you can see pictures of me of my children and my family right there. And so you'll be able to match the faces with the names in the book.
I can appreciate that. Is there like a website or I mean, as far as counseling or anything like that, like
Oh, I love it.
or you know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah,
I don't know if that's public information. I don't know if you want to share that,
it
but
is.
it's yeah. So
I'd love to share. So I actually currently work for Anonymous Health, which I love. I love, love, love where I work. It's an online platform. We're new. We're available in California, the state of Oregon, and Alaska currently.
great.
We have therapists and counselors that are available to, and that's where I work. And so I have the opportunity to telehealth with people. And so you can reach out by looking up anonymoushealth.com and look and see, and you'll see lots of different providers to choose from, and there's even an app to download, and I'd love to take you on if you need the help. I'm here for you.
Appreciate that. Thank you so very much.
Oh, yeah,
I think that kind of
absolutely.
ends our podcast.
I think
So thank
so,
you
my
so very
friend.
much. So
Thank you.
I'm gonna take a minute to stop this recording. If we get disconnected, we could jump back onto the green room one of
Okay.
that link. So uh
Okay.